This is our third session, as you've probably gathered if you've been watching AVTV. The first session we looked at was Enterprise AV, which is really good. It discussed lots of issues about the use of AV strategically within companies, major corporates especially. The second one we've looked at Internet of Things, which significantly took on the argument and developed a lot of themes that split really IoT into infrastructure measurement and in delivering a good experience for the AV users. And today, our second day here at the Infocom show, thanks to AV Nation, where we very kindly put on this lovely environment for us. We're looking at collaboration in the enterprise, which is a very vague and general term, but we're hoping to try and get some meaningful comments strapped around that, actually with some pretty experienced individuals on the couch. And on the end of the couch is John Sidwick, Vice President of Maverick Europe. To his left is Mr. Jason Moss, who is Head of Go-to-Market at Logitech. And on my immediate right is the inimitable Mr. Darren Pitt, who is Sales and Marketing Director of Digitavia. And it's going to be a fairly simple sort of list of questions here. We'll sort of see how the chat develops as we go on. And the first one, as we probably noted in our sort of pre-session chats, was how important is collaboration within the workspace? That's a nice waffly one to open with. Do you want to crack off with that, John?
Well, I think collaboration is important across not only the workspace, but as part of everybody's lives. The whole world now is collaborating both in personal life and in work life. So the personal piece that people are experiencing has to transfer into the workplace, and people are used to talking, communicating, videoing, voice conferencing, data sharing as part of the way that they live their lives and part of the way they are now working together. I think it's vital.
Jason, what about you? Logitech has a different sort of take on this in more of a huddle arena, don't you?
Yeah, we have a very interesting, as we see the workspace change and more people being dispersed throughout the different environments. We've seen a statistic where anytime you're having a meeting, there's 3 to 4 different people connecting in from different locations. And so being able to foster a collaboration environment where the people in the remote locations can feel like they're contributing to the project and making sure it goes smoothly is becoming vitally important. The other thing we too also see is a lot of specialization with how people are working too. So to get different projects done, you need to bring in a lot of different elements and a lot of different people, as there's less generalists out there in the market, and we really need to have a way to bring them into the fold.
Darren, what about you?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think we're seeing 2 clear channels of collaboration. I think, as Jason says, we're seeing a lot of these spaces, products like Cisco Spark, where people are collaborating. They've got an open room, as they call it, and they're sharing knowledge, they're discussing topics. But I think that's also leading to very specific environments that when they do need to get together, we're seeing companies invest in collaboration environments that are there to enhance that human interaction that there is needed at certain points within that project or that series of meetings, where they're coming to share that knowledge, discuss what's been ongoing for weeks or months, and then work within a very fixed environment that aids and promotes better collaboration.
We raised these sort of points in a recent round table, didn't we? I had those sort of pieces. And what worried me slightly is how the collaborative process supports good decision making. Because I mean, it's nice to have a brainstorming environment, a collaborative environment to share ideas, but does that necessarily lead to good decision making? John?
Well, I think it definitely leads to quicker decision making. We're seeing the rate and speed of decisions having to become far more quicker in the working environment. But I also think you get a far more personal-based decision-making process involving more people by having a really strong collaborative environment. I know personally in business now, I spend a lot of time with face-to-face video using Skype for Business, which is it's an easy-to-use platform where you can jump in and out of both a voice call and a face-to-face video call, but also bring data into that call. And that has become part of my working life, and I feel that the decision-making process is better, it's certainly quicker, and it's certainly more robust than it would have been without it.
Yeah, I think having the ability to have all these remote participants be there on video with high quality audio lends itself to not being more engaged in the discussion, whereas you're typically on an audio call, you're just calling into something. Most people are multitasking, doing 3 different things at the same time, but if you're in a true collaboration environment where everybody can see, hear, and review the same data at the same time, you're going to have much crisper decision making because you're going to have all the information ahead of you, and you're going to have your mind really into the problem at hand.
Actually, it's a good point what you're saying about being able to see participants and be able to judge the meeting. What I've noticed by using video all the time is that where we had voice calls before, I had really no idea if everybody was either there, were they going to make coffee, were they engaged, were they listening. Actually, with video happening, you can see what people are doing, and when they start to get distracted, you can either change the topic, bring them in, so you know that everybody who should be engaged in that process is engaged. And I think that really does help in terms of the crispness of the decision-making process.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think we're also seeing, because people are prepared to work from home, they don't feel so isolated anymore around video because it's a much more engaged experience. I think the other side of that is we're seeing that the buildings that they would traditionally go to work in are no longer traditional buildings. People go in there to have that one weekly experience where they are going to catch up with people, and it's about meetings rather than sitting at the desk. So it's having a dramatic effect on those spaces, all different types of environments. So it is an experience when you go into the office. You go in there to have that experience to work in an open zone or a coffee area. So it's, I'd agree with that.
Well, it sort of leads us quite nicely to really what technology you use, and it sort of raised the idea in my mind: should you match the technology to the user, or should you match it to the type of meeting or environment you're having in there? And still, there's so many technologies; it's a little bit confusing about which seem to be the main one. We've got Surface Hub coming into the process now, and all these so-called disruptive technologies that are destined to sort of change the people's work, not just acting as a facilitating technology. Is it quite that clearly cut, do you think, John?
Well, I think people are now collaborating for free. That's the first point, and they are bringing their own collaboration environment into work. It's called an iPhone or any of their mobile devices. I mean, people are actually starting to collaborate on an ad hoc basis on their own. So that's the start point. Where we're seeing a big evolution is the fact that people really see the technology as something that needs to be accessible. We're working with Logitech on Logitech Kit, which is a very accessible product, which is fairly agnostic to what type of platform you use. So you have platform options across all the normal known formats. And it's also, that enables people to come in and start collaborating fairly inexpensively, but very easily in an environment they understand. Then we got the step up into more fixed collaboration environments like Surface Hub, obviously that's a step up, and then you get into a very formal deployed collaboration environment like Cisco Spark, which is more of an enterprise formal environment. And I think it's fairly straightforward. I think a lot of people are scared of the word collaboration, thinking there's a big infrastructure change or a big change in the way people work, or even a big investment. But I think people can start getting into the collaboration environment quite seamlessly and quite inexpensively now.
And I think you're going to see, when people go into the office, they expect more. It means more meeting environments of different shapes and sizes, not as we would traditionally call an AV meeting room today. But I think that's also leading to companies where they've got to deploy more, but they're looking for lower cost solutions. They're looking, and there's lots of small bits of kit. In Logitech, certainly, when you look at the camera range and the systems they do, they're promoting lower cost environments, and there's a lot of other technology. I think it's a very interesting time because I think a lot of corporates are using a lot of very small technology that's very cost efficient, but actually does a great deal to ensure that every space has, collaboration. Because if you're working from home, you don't want to go in the office and just sit in a room with a table. You want to use all these different tools, so you are getting that next level up of collaboration. And it's, it really is enhancing what they do.
So at Logitech, one of the things we focus on with having a lot of our roots in traditional consumer technologies is consumer insights, how people are working. And one of the big sea changes that we're seeing is really being driven by the cell phone. So if I were to look at my cell phone, I've got pages and pages and pages and pages of apps here. I really only use a handful of the apps that are on my front page. And why do I use those? Well, I check the weather channel for weather. I have TeamStream for my sports updates. I check out stocks. And so I developed this concept of going into best of breed. I would really want to do something unique that is very tailored for that market. And it's not a millennial change, it's not anything to do with ages, it's really driven by this. So as people are starting to work and want to be in these collaborative environments, no longer can you deploy something that is a single use case. You have to do something that is prepared and open to be able to handle all the different applications that are going to come out, whether they're collaboration tools like Slack, which allows you to do asynchronous collaboration, real-time collaboration from traditional video conferencing vendors, or maybe something like Jira from Atlassian, where engineers are going to go and debug and do a Scrum session. But those programs now, through technologies like WebRTC, can very easily build in audio video directly into that program. So almost what you start to have to do is build the smartphone of the meeting room, where you build this generic platform that has high quality audio and video, is affordable to deploy throughout, but allows you that flexibility to bring in the applications that the consumers are going to want as time evolves.
We're certainly seeing that. We're seeing a corporate organisation will give the basis of the structure, but they'll let people choose what they want to do. Because, as you said, you might use OneNote, I might use Evernote, you might use Notes. They all do a similar thing, but we'll use different apps at different times. Now, I've sometimes got two apps that I'll use when I'm in different moods, and I think people use different technology. And if they're working from home, they might go and sit in the living room. I'm going to do this call from my iPad. They might be in the home office. They're going to do it from their desktop. They will choose things based upon mood as well. And I think that's very key, that you need to allow for.
And that's driving user adoption, because one of the big barriers to deploying collaboration is not only the cost, but also a lot of the proof of concept areas within the business showed that these collaboration spaces weren't used. And they weren't used because users didn't really know how to use them. They couldn't go and engage with that process easily.
Well, people were told. They were told there was a video room that you went in, you picked up a remote, and you dialed it. Now they can walk into the room with their device, connect it, and make the video call using their platform.
And that comfort of use means that people are using more, which means the adoption from companies to allow that usage to happen is becoming much stronger. And we're certainly seeing with products like Logitech and other products in the market that accessibility of getting the technology in means that the 95% of meeting rooms that had nothing in it before are now available. They're spaces that we can start to put, and the AV industry, or the whole industry, can start to put product into. Before, we used to focus on the 5% of the meeting rooms, which were high investment, highly complicated, and those ones you had to pre-book, and most people didn't know how to use, and when you did go in there, it spent 20 minutes trying to work out how to use it. Now people are using a GUI that they live with every day, and they're engaging straight away in a collaboration environment.
We're sort of making informal a very formal environment. It's very difficult. I mean, it's an interesting point you made there, Jace, about starting from quite good basics. I often wondered whether even with the smaller and more accessible environments, whether you need to almost do an analysis of some kind before you start experimenting, even in a humble way, to be able to then say, well, we need to plan this some way. How are people working? How do we understand what we really need? Rather than, it seems to be very much a trial and error. Let's see how we go at the small end of the scale. There seems to be a certain element of informality about that, rather than a firm business thinking behind it. Is that right, or is that?
Yeah, I think there's a new sea change with the advent of the cloud and all these collaboration tools and video conferencing tools in the cloud, where you don't have to make a big investment in an on-premise solution to go and experiment with a lot of different items. Plus, you can start to use general purpose processors, get an Intel NUC, small form factor PC, put it into the room, can run any application. It really allows people to decide. Interesting analogy to this is, back at UCLA, they did this great landscape architecture with these nice meandering paths and manicured flowers and grass everywhere. And then, sure enough, 1 month later, there's little lines and track marks through that grass because people wanted to get somewhere more efficiently. I can't remember the name of the university, but it's a university in Indiana. Went out and they just laid down sod and left it for a month. And then they saw where all the paths are going. And then that's where they built the walkways.
Right.
So if you bring that into AV, you have the ability today to give a lot of people some options. See what resonates with your workforce. See what's driving the best productivity for your individuals without making a big investment, and then you can build what's right for them.
I'd agree with that. I think we've seen a lot of enterprise customers, whereas years ago they would deploy one thing or maybe two. We have some enterprise customers that allow the business to use Skype, WebEx, allowing them, so actually if they find different ways that work for them and that's successful for that team and the way they work and their individual processes, if they're reaching the objective of the business and they're reaching it quicker and faster and everyone's happy and the work-life balance, all these things everyone's striving for, actually they're allowing to have multiple different platforms from multiple different vendors. And they're quite happy to just have that kind of flow and a lot more relaxed about it. And you're right, because it is the cloud, there's no investment. You're going to look at things like a Kano, very quick adoption, no layout, actually low cost licensing, 2-3 months, if that at all. So that's really putting the flexibility into the workspace.
Is it then for a very straightforward process to specify? It seems we're talking about a basic level here, straightforward. I can't quite hear I didn't hear everything you said there, but is it a relatively straightforward thing to specify at the low level? Because I'm thinking once you get these rooms that become quite complex with technology, and then you have to think how you're going to integrate them with other technologies in the company. Or are they always going to be separate, almost islands, if you like, growing on their own, fulfilling their own little huddle type functions and not being integrated in the whole enterprise?
But I think that's what the guys are talking about, but Jason and Darren. The adoption is so easily tested.
That's what worries me slightly. That you're going to run away with all kinds of individual adoptions.
We're talking about the 95% rooms, not the 5% rooms, and you will have big enterprise deployments made around decisions on either Cisco or Surface Hub, and they will be formal. They'll be decided upon and be part of the infrastructure of the business. In fact, what we're seeing a legitimization of AV by companies like Cisco, like Logitech, like Microsoft, saying actually this is a real space now. So AV is an important part of how we have to collaborate in the work environment. So you'll get some very formal big decision deployments of enterprise technology.
And it's not just about the software being cloud-based. You'll see a lot of you were saying, a lot of the devices now have built-in hardware of some description that can download apps from the App Store. So if they're using one thing, they can download it from an App Store. They can choose to approve that, or they'll say, well, actually in 6 months we've got bored of that, and then we're now to next thing. But again, you can remove that app and download it. I think when you said about your iPhone, the meeting rooms and all spaces almost become like the iPhone. The device has become, they choose their apps.
And because you're looking at the other 95% of rooms, it's not the traditional sit around the desk in a bowling alley style room where we're all kind of looking like this at the video and just standing up and presenting. These are rooms where real work needs to get done. And it's not the very traditional layout. You need to get in there, you need to write stuff on the whiteboard, you need to look at different business models, take out physical devices. So really just looking at the different structures of the room and having that ability to have multiple locations throughout an organization where you can do this. Herman Miller, one of the companies we partner with, furniture company, talks about this. They said a workspace should be like your home. When you're at home, you cook in your kitchen, you relax in your living room, you sleep in your bedroom. Workplaces need to be the same way. You can't have just one scenario in all the rooms. So you really need to have that diversity and flexibility to create what the users need.
So you say we're sort of moving into an environment of multiple workspaces, all very different.
Yes.
And then you start to get an unwieldy architecture, I suppose, an unwieldy structure then grows and grows amoeba-like until you have to sort of think about how you're going to manage it.
We've discussed this before. I think people will choose to use a space based upon mood. If you look at a senior executive, they might be holding a round of interviews, and for 3 days they might use a boardroom. On the 4th day, they want a different space. They're bored of that space. I don't want to be in that room again. And they'll have the same interview, but they'll almost have it in a coffee shop environment. People will choose to use spaces and technology based upon what they're trying to achieve, and almost by how their mood is. So they will move around the building, and they've got to cater those type of environments.
And I think because of what we're saying in terms of the movement of this technology throughout the work environment, in different spaces, different areas, and for different uses, there's never been a more exciting time for AV than now. Never. We're seeing that legitimization of AV, and I'm seeing it really from a channel perspective, from multiple channel perspective. Everybody is talking about display devices being used in a variety of areas that would never have been used before. So I think the age of the old chalk and talk or Excel PowerPoint presentation room where you either had a shared projector moving around the building, if you're lucky something installed, that's the thing of the past. The collaboration technology being spread across the whole organisation means that the AV products sold through the channel will never be stronger.
Yeah, and I think there's an important aspect to this, as you talk about them being different architectures for all these different rooms. It doesn't necessarily need to be that way, because you can actually leverage a general purpose PC and then install the right cloud-based applications, productivity tools to do that. But IT has been doing this for years. They're deploying different laptops to their sales force than they are to the engineers. And so if you start to deploy meeting rooms almost like you're deploying PCs, it's really only one architecture you're supporting. It's just different applications on top of that. So looking outside of the AV discipline within an organization and starting to bring the IT people into the fold can help solve some of those challenges that would be more difficult for the traditional AV.
And that's a really good point, because we're seeing a lot of demand for simple to deploy solutions where a large corporate that's often global wants to just say, right, we'll have 4 or 5, like the BOYD advice where you have your laptop situation where you have 4 or 5 different options. They want to have 4, 5, 6, 7 different options of different types of collaboration experience and just deploy those across their all of their real estate, and you choose which one goes in which room to give you which environment you
I
have.
think the only difficult thing about this, the market we're in today, is a lot of big system integrators that require those big ticket sales. When you're moving to a lot of small devices that are very low cost but do a lot, that's quite a difficult challenge in terms of, you see it with people like yourselves, people like Revo Labs, do great product, very low cost, but will do a lot. How those products filter down to the end users or businesses, because there's almost like a filter of the integrators, which I'm one of, but how do you kind of, they've got these things they've got to achieve. Big companies built up over years of time selling £10,000, £20,000 Cisco systems, where you're almost deploying £1,000 room now. That's quite a challenging to make sure that technology is getting through to the end users.
From what we see system integrators never been busier.
Yeah,
and on high tickets, so it's driving both ends. They're driving both adoption downstream, and that's often an IT department decision. It's a bit like, projectors have often become a peripheral decision made by the facilities management part of the business. Yeah, they're not specified anymore. They're like a printer. It's just a facility management or an IT department specified purchase. The bigger ticket items where the traditional system integrators sit, they're growing. There's more and more of those opportunities because the demand to actually have more sophisticated systems in other parts of the business have been driven by the rest of the business using video.
It's interesting, isn't it? So it's enabling the higher profile, more expensive systems might be easier to try out the hotter systems.
Well, yeah, and if we have a platform, whether it's whatever platform that sits in the cloud is being used as the interface, it means the adoption of those bigger spaces is stronger as well.
Yeah, I think it's for 95%, but I think it is a slightly scary ground for some companies when you can think now that you can deploy, an all-encompassing room with audio, great camera, video for
$2,000.
$2,000. That's yes, there's 95 of them, and that's great, but it is it's a massive training and mindset change that needs to be applied for that technology to
exactly,
go through.
Yeah, but it is a big opportunity for the people who want to embrace it, because the volume from 5 to 95 is tremendous, but as we talked about, the customization of these rooms and the different workflows and different uses in there, these are going to be ever evolving rooms. So it's not just deploy the room and walk away. You need to service that room over time, and you need to continue to update that room, change in new programs, bring in new technologies within the same arena. So you could start to service that room for a fee, an annual
people
fee.
Consume more, don't they? You get more, like you said, with your device. As you start using it, you consume more. Then you go to the iPad, you're consuming more because you're getting a great deal of success out of one will lead to the other. So as they'll start off as 95% basic rooms, those environments will change because people will say, this is great, we're doing more, we're achieving more. They'll want more, they'll demand more, so they will grow.
Yeah, success breeds success. So, and that's a great point, Darren, because one of the reasons we're seeing slow deployment of expensive systems is people don't use them really. So fast deployment is a sign that the fact is people are going to be using this technology, and we're very much on the first rung of a very big ladder, and the development we see, the devices we see now, is the start point of a complete change in the industry. We're back like we were 20 years ago in Infocom with the first DLP projectors that are this big, and that's where we are. Yeah, that's where we are, and we'll be sitting here in 20 years' time. Won't be us. We're sitting in 20 years' time, but we'll be looking back at these old days, and there will be refreshing the technology and the way that technology is being used.
Will we be completely rethinking what a room is at that point? That by then, with all the IoT bananas going on, that we'll have an intelligent thinking room that will match itself to what they know us. They know what we're going to do in a room, and automatically latch on to what they know we're about to do in a meeting room. If it's indeed called a meeting room.
I don't think it is a room anymore. I think it's just a space. It's a meeting space, whether it's virtual or it's a real, it's just a space. And there are so many different flavours of those spaces now, but I don't think actually it's, we've certainly seen companies take rooms out of action, so having less room, but more open zones and more collaboration spaces. And that's a very big trend we're seeing now.
And again, it's the power of these general purpose computing solutions that if you build AV on top of it, it's very simple to start to add IoT devices to that, sensors, different programs, monitoring, and you're not ripping and replacing anything out, you're just adding to it. So another opportunity for the AV industry, as these rooms evolve and IoT becomes very important. You've already established a beachhead in these rooms with a flexible device that you can come back in and say to an organization, well, we deployed these 100 rooms for you, but now we have these great sensors that will do proximity detection, turn off your lights in the room, and we can come back into that room we already installed and continue the engagement over the course of time with the customer.
Well, that goes to what you're saying, isn't it, Jason? I mean, one of the challenges is, can traditional system integrators start selling IoT solutions, smart building solutions? The ones that do, and the ones that embrace this change, will be the ones that will be incredibly successful over the next 10 years.
Well, a big part of our business, a big change that we've seen in the last 3 years, because there is more spaces now, is around room bookings. Room booking systems that fully integrate end-to-end, wave finding, that is a big area part of our business. And before we start any engagement, how are you going to manage these rooms? What is the booking process? What is the support process for these rooms? And that's a massive upturn.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because the decision-making process before, when we were 10 years ago in AV, it was product-based decisions, largely a hardware discussion on features and benefits, like what's the anti-lumen, what's the throw distance, how does that work in an office or a meeting room. Now the first conversation is a platform-based conversation.
It's about user experience.
What experience do you use? What's the platform that you're going to use? So we've gone from a product discussion to a platform discussion. We've gone from a presentation discussion to a collaboration discussion. So things are changing rapidly that the user needs to take into account in a completely different way.
Well, that's the difference between splitting IoT into those two areas. And one that gives you more information about the infrastructure and how it's performing, how users are performing, and the second bit, which is delivering the AV experience to the users themselves. I think they're two big aspects of IoT. Perhaps that will separate out, I don't know, but it's got to come, especially as that space becomes more flexible.
Well, also it's interesting because A is becoming a lot more important now in AV. In the old presentation environment, it was rarely used. It was often deployed. Well, not often deployed actually. It'd often be a part of the device, and that was it. And it was either used or not used. But most probably 2% of the time you had some sort of A content in your AV solution because you didn't have audio-video collaboration standard, and therefore the A bit was really put to one side. Now the A bit is as important as the B bit. So having great audio that enables you to communicate and collaborate correctly is more important. So there's a lot more expertise needed around audio as well as the visual side, and that's important because it's often missed in part of the solution specification.
Yeah, we actually talk about it in very similar terms, but we say AVC, audio video content. You need all three for a successful meeting. And so you can have a successful meeting without the video. Content makes it a little bit more productive, but if you don't have the A,
you're dead.
You're dead. It's done.
Absolutely.
Well, there's like two big launches here today with Crestron doing all this Dante infrastructure stuff, and Biamp, really launching a major VoIP and video pipe of the distribution environment, all of which now are looking seriously about putting that balance into company environments and everything else. So it's beginning to move a bit after years of neglect and no one really knowing what audio should be in a corporate environment. But I expect these spaces are going to start to create more sensual environments where the actual AV is more responsive to the needs, not just operationally, but also giving that slightly more realistic experience, even in small spaces, perhaps. I mean, we're a bit ahead here, but you can see it happening potentially.
I think people are starting to talk about user experience, and they understand more about audio. They're more informed. They understand what good audio. Even from using a device, they understand actually I can hold that and I can get good audio. So they do expect more. And because we're having those conversations, not talking about the widgets or what makes that system, actually talking about the quality and what you're going to get.
The deliverable.
They all know that actually you can make it happen, you can join it all together. That's the easy bit. It's actually about the quality.
Because I think the more they're using these technologies, the more they're going to start demanding of them. I think not many people demanded AVC, which is normally well known for its bad audio, because only relatively few people using it. It was still a relative novelty, but now it's become almost ubiquitous, hasn't it?
Well, people
you're
were
doing
scared
it
of
for your
VC.
phone everywhere, really.
Yeah,
So people were demanding.
Yeah, people were scared of it. I mean, I've been involved in many meetings where people didn't want a video meeting, 4 or 5 years ago. They're just scared of it. Now they're kind of annoyed if they haven't got access to it in a meeting process. There's complete reversal happened over the last 2 or 3 years, where it's now an expected part of the way you people meet and collaborate.
Yeah, when we go out and talk to end customers, we actually have trained our sales force on this. If somebody asks us, why should I have video? Is it going to save me travel costs? Is it going to make me more productive? We say, thank you very much, we'll come back and see you later. Because the rest of the market is moving.
Yeah.
And we don't even have the time to sit down and try and educate on it. Just the market has moved. It's being adopted.
Yep.
And there's enough areas for us to go concentrate on.
And that's the thing, how big an education exercise do we need to embark upon? Is it sort of learning as you go along with this stuff, or are people needing to be able to educate about how to get the most out of this stuff, or what? Do you feel it's a bit of a learning exercise we go on here? We are sort of familiar with many of the components, but are we sufficiently familiar and get the most out of all the components as one solution?
Well, I think if you have to start talking that, we've failed. Because the adoption has got to be seamless.
It's got to be.
And it's got to be just. I mean, that's why we're seeing such a strong reaction to something like Service Hub, because it's running 365.
It's intuitive.
People are sitting in Skype for Business. Like it's running Skype for Business, which people are using every day of their lives as either an IM function or IM and video and collaboration. And people say, yeah, I've moved from that desktop environment to a screen environment without even thinking about it. And if we have to start training people, nobody sends an instruction manual out with an iPhone. You don't get anything with an iPhone. And most people,
good point.
My mother's 75 and she uses her iPhone and her iPad without a problem.
I think
Because that product's been designed to be used. And if we have to start training people to use products, that's when they stop being
Good
used.
point, yeah.
Because nobody can be bothered to either train people or to keep on being retrained on how to use it.
years ago, you would deploy a room that would be, technology-heavy room, and you would see it's a technology-heavy room.
Yeah.
You'd see a control system and a screen with a great big rack. These days, you go into a room and it'll be a high-end environment, but actually, you don't know any of these kits in there. You don't see the speaker in the ceiling. You don't see these elements. You just go in, you do one touch, and you get on with stuff.
Yeah.
You don't see what's behind the scenes because the technology's been designed to enhance the environment.
Yeah.
And I think if we're, as you said, if we've got to walk in there and people are getting touching buttons and getting a control panel going, what do I want to do today? I want to make a video call and then a dial and an address book. Then that's just...
We fail.
We fail.
Yeah.
We're selling,
Yeah.
as an industry, we're selling the wrong things. We're going back in time here.
Yeah, and you don't just make the rooms for the rooms themselves. Two of our partners here at the show, Pexip and Zoom, are demonstrating how they can walk into a room with our devices and from their phone instantly start a call. So you're bringing your personal device into the room and making sure that room is accessible, not just a closed environment itself.
Well, the future looks positive and great for the industry and all to reap on the back of increased user awareness of what can be done and what can be supplied. Sounds fantastic. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for spending time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.